Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
I got a surprise for you.
Okay.
It was a surprise for me. You're going to have to fill about 15 seconds of airtime here. I didn't think this through. But if you were going to surprise today, what kind of surprise would you think you would get?
Ooh, I don't know. A special. I don't know. It's coming in a box. Let's see.
You have to
another Yeti.
You have to guess. That's not a bad guess. I got a gift.
Oh, does it say give hate a chance?
I wish that'd be hilarious.
Or hate needs better PR.
It does not. That's a very good guess. This was a gift I got from my mother-in-law.
Oh.
She sent me two of them.
Oh.
With one of them supposed to go to you.
Oh, thank you.
So
thank you.
Check it out. I should have got this. Oh yeah, I think I already opened it.
Okay.
There.
All right.
Okay.
Nice.
See what you see.
I always love opening things on. Oh wow, this is huge.
It's
huge coffee cup. All right. Oh, nice. Got that.
You will have to unwrap it to.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, that's nice. So the bubble wrap, you can probably see through the bubble wrap. It's our logo. But what you didn't see on the back was it says Zach Hale, Michael Mott, and Greg Kokel.
So Greg Kokel getting a shout out. Thank you. That's from Kim, my mother-in-law.
Very nice. Very nice.
So I thought that would be good alive. Unboxing because I was dying laughing in the same way you were. I was like, 'cause I didn't know what to expect, and I saw our logo first.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, on the back, I was like, oh, and it's the cool.
That's very nice. That's very cool. Very much appreciated. Yeah.
You know, after a long day, Michael's been on the road all day.
Whew. Yes, we went up to Anderson, left at 5:30. So I'm going to try to bring the energy the best that I can. But if I do fall asleep, you just have to carry it. Okay.
We'll do it well. You know, we'll stay away from the dark.
Yeah.
We'll get the lights on.
Yeah. Be sober.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And the sermon title is "Put on the Armor of Light."
Yeah. There we go.
So let's go ahead and take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level. All right, if I'm counting right, this can't be 40th because I posted 40, so this must be 41. So I think I'm off again. This must be 41 when we. But so this is we're gonna second sermon in Romans 13, and title comes out of the passage: "Put on the armor of light." And have you heard of this doomsday clock?
I have heard of this. I don't understand it because it seems like we're always right there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's just a bunch of fear-mongering people who want to tax you more. That's my cynical
taxes,
take.
Man. I do, and it's like, this is maybe not the doomsday clock. This is everything. I feel like there's so much data that's like, in 1995, we're gonna run out of resources.
Right.
In 2003, there's too many people, or it's like, and it's like, okay.
I just saw. And speaking of that, I just saw a reel with Al Gore talking about Mount Kilimanjaro, and he was like, "Look at this picture. Now look at this picture. 10 years later, look at all the snow." He's like, "In 5 years, there will never be snow on Mount Kilimanjaro again." And then like they showed a picture from like 2023, and it's just like
covered,
packed with snow.
I don't like that fear mongering.
Yeah,
it's easy to do. And I think I feel like you just prey on these people that, I mean, if that is true, you should have a lot of fear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't think about things, but it's like, if you were like, oh, the world's ending in 6 years, like definitively, because of X, Y, and Z, and we can make it not, like by just doing a couple of things.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if the governments of the world knew definitively that an asteroid was going to hit us, they wouldn't tell us. Why would you tell everyone? That's the number one way you know that it's actually not happening is when they say, so when they're like, oh, everything's fine, just keep on with your family while these important people leave and try to go to Mars real quick.
Right. Like nothing to worry about. But I'll tell you what, when you think about this doomsday clock, we're only 89 seconds to midnight.
Oh, yeah.
That's less than a minute and a half. We're getting there. I'm like, I don't know what this means.
That's right. Yeah. And some of the things, what were some of the things that... nuclear weapons. Is that really like we've had nuclear weapons since 1944?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I just would not consider them a factor in where we are on the doomsday. Climate crisis clearly made up. Can I say that on this podcast?
You heard it here first. I think that's pretty safe.
Artificial intelligence, infectious diseases, conflicts with Ukraine and the Middle East. These were the things they listed to let us know that we had 89 seconds until the world was destroyed, which I wasn't convinced reading it.
Yeah.
Not from that.
And their point is they're trying to say now it's time to act together. With all these threats, if we come together, we can, reverse this or, give us some more time. We need some leadership, some partnership of global proportions.
If only we had John Lennon singing Imagine. Man. It would be great.
I love it when, celebrities do that. But every second counts. Pastor even did his best Spanish impression, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Juan Manuel Santos had that. And the cada segundo cuenta. Every second counts.
Boom. And, maybe we don't agree with everything on the doomsday clock, but Paul had his own doomsday clock of sorts. It's different, but...
Yeah, I mean, as Christians, we know we are getting close to the end of the world. God's sovereign over that. And maybe... So I think... In one sense, Christians should be the most concerned about the environment and also the least concerned about the environment. The most concerned that we should be good stewards of what God's given us. The least concerned in that ultimately we know it's going to burn and God's in control of this. And it's not set up to be perfect. Like there's no system that's going to give us the perfect food to the perfect people without any dyes or out any, gluten and stuff like. There's going to be bad stuff. Because we live in a fallen world, right?
Yeah, can't get away from gluten.
Right.
That's one of the. I think it's in Genesis 3 with the curse, and there will be gluten for your gut.
That's right. So I'm not saying, let's do our best. Let's put our minds together. Let's figure out, let's optimize the best we can. Because I think that's what we're called to do. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we recognize this is not meant to be our permanent, perfect home.
That's a good take. If anyone's interested, Doug Moo, who writes one of these commentaries on Romans, he spends a lot of time developing things about what you just said. He thinks Christians either, you don't have to be, environment's such a political thing. So people are like, I'm just going to drive my F1 350 everywhere, or I don't know, I'm going to purposefully.
Are you trying to hit on people who drive F-150s?
No, I'm just saying. I think there is an air of certain Christians that they're like, I'm intentionally gonna do what I can to not care for the environment, and that's like their attitude.
Right. That's not loving your neighbor who has to live in that environment, whether they're your current neighbor or your future neighbor. And it's also not being obedient to God's mandate to take hold of the world, create, do all those things. Yeah.
And it's not, no. But we will get to the passage. Romans 13, we're going to close out this chapter. Paul writes in verses 11 through 14, do this, knowing the time, that it's already the hour for you to awaken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believed. The night is almost gone and the day is near. Therefore, let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave properly as in the day, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual promiscuity and sensuality, not in strife and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh in regard to its lusts.
All right, so first we're told, do this knowing the time that is already the hour. This is first for you to awaken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believed. And there's this idea of knowing the time. Now, I know that we can't really know the time because Jesus said no one knows the hour, not even the Son or the angels. So clearly we can't have any indication that we're getting closer to the end times. Is that right?
That is wrong. And even by deduction, I like the way Paul thinks. He's like, hey, we're now a second closer. I mean, the math checks out. It's true.
Right. That's right.
You really can't, refute that.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this last week. We've talked about another podcast. It's like this call to be vigilant, to be paying attention. You just don't want to have your head in the sand totally. It's like we're eagerly, expecting and looking for things. We're not just, forgetting about all these things. We are getting closer.
Yeah, so go read Matthew 24-25, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. You'll see Jesus and Paul both giving us indications of how we can know when the end is near. Jesus is going to tell his disciples, when to go harvest fruit. Why you should also be able to read these times appropriately. And I think he said that both about his coming right then, like, hey, you should know that it's the time for the Messiah, but also he uses that, for when the end's going to be near.
And so we'll move on to verse 12. The night is almost gone and the day is near. Therefore, what are we to do? We're to lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. I really like the way it's contrasted. We got the dark and the light, but not only that, it's like the armor of light. It's not just like, don't do darkness, walk in the light. It puts a little bit more to it,
Yeah. What kind of armor is that?
Ooh, it's like the heavy armor.
Is it? Oh, okay. It's heavy. It's not like mithril armor like Bilbo gave to Frodo.
Oh, I should have seen it coming.
Joel makes this point. It's important to study Christ's return, and it's important for Christ's return to impact how we live our lives right now. So both of those are important. Going back to Matthew 24, 25, if you get through 24, it's a lot of warnings, reading the times. You get to 25, a lot of parables about being ready, being on alert, being vigilant.
No, that is very, very true, and it's so important because you can just look at, I'm going to know every detail of Christ's return, but it should motivate you to live differently. And Paul does a good job of laying out these contrasts before us. We kind of mentioned night and day. There's darkness, light, put off, put on. You can see that there's one way and then another way. They're very different. And the takeaway is change your clothes. Yeah. Change your dirty clothes.
Joe left one off here. Awake and asleep.
Boom. There you go.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
1 John 3:9 says, no one who is born of God practices sin. Not that he doesn't sin, but it can't be a mark of his life. It can't be a steady practice of his life, his or her life, because his seed abides in him and he cannot sin because he is born of God. So if you're, this is, just to bring back, Greg Kochel, he'll always say, if you're living like hell, that's probably where you're headed. So if your life is marked by this trajectory of sin, that's a bad indication that you are actually born of God. And so we need to have lives that are not by that. And then even as Christians, Paul's calling us, okay, become as clean as possible.
No, that's great. And so part of that is to do all these things, you need to lay aside the deeds of darkness. You might be asking, what are these deeds? Well, Paul in the next verse is going to start fleshing out what some of these things are. He says in verse 13, let's behave properly as in the day, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual promiscuity and sensuality, not in strife and jealousy. And so he starts listing out some things. And I think Pastor made this note too. It's interesting, the different groupings that he pairs together.
Yeah. So, and not to reduce or diminish, some of the impact that sexual sin and the lust is having on our society, but those are listed, kind of in this parallel list with drunkenness, sensuality, strife, jealousy. So those can all be issues.
No, that's great. Pastor Joel takes us to Proverbs 6, this prominent passage that we probably heard a lot, talking about these 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. Then they're listed out: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. That last one that closes it out is exactly that, one who spreads strife. If you really want to get into it, 3 out of these 7 have to do with what you say. And so spreading strife with your words, that's a bad thing to do. It's mentioned a lot, which if you're like trying to think of the top 6 or 7 things, you might not be like, oh, these are what's going to come to mind. Yeah.
And did you ever play football or a sport in the mud? Maybe soccer in the mud?
Yeah.
What did you like, playing in the rain or not like playing in the rain?
I typically would not like it, but there was like 1 or 2 practices a year that were like pretty epic, and it was always good I always enjoyed bad weather when we were playing like a really good team. But if we were the good team, I was like, I don't want to play in bad weather.
Right? Yeah.
Mucks it up,
Yeah. So Pastor relates this story of some guys playing, and it was raining, and there was this ditch that had collected this water. So it was like, I'm guessing it was like a broad ditch, and it was kind of muddy. So they're playing football, and I've played football in the mud. It's like, I'm a kind of a clean guy. So it takes it like once I get over that hump, I'm like, okay, let's just go for it, and it can be fun. But then all the cleanup because mud gets everywhere. But they were enjoying it. They were having a great time, and this guy, goes for a pass or something. He comes up out of the water, and a friend notices something on his shoulder.
Oh man!
And they begins to like smell. And it is raining, but with this rain, it looks like a sewer pipe had
don't like where this is
opened
going.
up and had gone into that ditch. And the guy exclaims, "We're playing in poo water."
I walked into the sermon thinking, what's the over-under that pastor's going to say poop water? And I thought maybe it would be 3, but man, he kept saying it.
He said it over and over again. And so Joel's, just like as soon as they notice we're playing in poop water,
that changes
everything, and they got to get out of that. He's like, so the same way, Christian, once you realize, okay, this lifestyle, this thing I'm doing, it's basically poop water. We got to get out of there. We can't be a stench in the nostrils of Christ.
Oh man, it's a very pungent, vivid analogy. 1 John 3:2-3 says, "Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not appeared as yet what we will be. We know that when he appears, we will be like him because we will see him just as he is. And everyone who has this hope fixed on him purifies himself, just as he is pure." So we see about this purity, and that's in relation to fixing your eyes on Christ. You're going to live in a way, if you have this hope, you're going to realize exactly what you said, Michael, that, man, this world, it really pales in comparison to what we have, and we're going to change the way we live. It's really the ultimate motivation.
That's good. And then the last part of that verse says, "And put on the armor of light." And so really, you're like, what is the armor of light? Because where do I find it? Do I have to like find a blacksmith or something, like ting, 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 put it together? But armor has this idea of protection, of going into battle, of being in a war, and it's a war, of holiness. And like if you live a Christian life like me, like you win a battle, and guess what? The next day you got to fight another battle.
Yeah.
You got to fight another battle against, the sin that wants to overtake you. And so it's not a sprint. It's a marathon war, and you need this armor to help you stand against it.
Great. And it's different than our justification, where it's just like this battle up and down. Hopefully we're trending in the right direction. Ephesians 6:10-17, familiar passage, talks about the armor of God. Really, I feel like that's the go-to for good reason. It's like, man, I think a lot of VBSs have just leaned into that because it's like that's a great thing to keep on your mind,
I've been in more than one class where they've talked about like every day you need to pray. Like I'm putting on my belt of truth. I'm putting on my, and I don't think that's how it works. Like I think if you are a believer, you have some level of all of this armor.
You're not like, left my belt at home again. I have no truth. Everything else is good, but it's not based in truth.
Right. So I think the goal is, as a believer, that you would level up your armor. Like the more you know truth, the better your belt is. The more sure your salvation is, the bigger your faith is. All those pieces of the armor become stronger.
We might have talked about this, and this is an aside, so I won't stay on this long, but Pilgrim Progress, great book. A lot of respect. John Bunyan, well done. Allegory is just too on the nose for me, where I might be making this up, but it's like, am I saved? Am I saved? And he's like, oh, found a note in my pocket, I'm saved. I'm like, I don't know. I just, it's good. Ephesians 6:17, I like that.
About a third of the book I like, and then I'm like, okay, good. That's good. I'm done.
And I am good. Pastor Joel uses the analogy of his dad, fought in World War II, was in the Navy. He was a net tender.
He was on a net tender.
Okay. I'm just reading notes.
So it was the type of boat that they would
catch the old, or make sure you could say it, submarines or something.
They put nets down. It would like stop submarines from getting into harbors and stuff.
And I guess he did not talk a lot about his experience more, but there was one story that he would tell about this guy being naive. His name was Ernie
Meister, I believe.
What a name. Ernie Meister, that just naively stuck his head out of the foxhole, which hard to imagine, but I guess you get comfortable. I'm like, I don't understand. I feel like war, I don't know. I've not been in there, but and maybe everyone's wired differently, and it did not go well for him.
Right. Yeah. He got shot.
Cool.
And the point was, I think Joel's dad's point was he was naive about the realities of that war. And
yeah, that is pretty naive.
Yeah. And then so Joel's point to us is we as Christians, we can be naive about the reality of the spiritual holy war that we're in to fight against, all those principalities and, the sin that's in us in our own flesh. And so we got to take it seriously.
And in doing that, Paul is going to continue into verse 14, and he's saying that we need to put on the Lord Jesus Christ. Pastor Joel takes us to John 15, this classic passage on abiding in Christ, where Jesus says in verse 5, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. And that I like, just again, very stark contrast. You're either abiding in Christ or without Christ, you really can't do anything. And that's really essential to all of this, is putting on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I want to look up the name to be sure, but I want to give a shout out to Aaron Williams' song, Abide. So if you're at CBC, we've sang it twice now. But if you're not at CBC, go put that on your playlist, because I really like it. It really motivates me, because I'm not, I'm more of the, I want to read Romans and, I'm going to read, but this really kind of speaks to me on the affective, emotional level to like, hey, you just need to stay in Jesus, just be with him and depend on him. Like, you're thinking about all those things.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Simple, yet very, very challenging. Yeah. John Piper's got this quote, and he says, the way to fight lust is to feed faith with the knowledge of an irresistibly glorious God. Do you know God this morning? Are you growing week by week in the knowledge of God's greatness? Do you meditate on his word day and night? Do you ponder the pictures of his son in the Gospels? Do you look at everything in your day as his creation? Do you pray for a sensitive heart that can be ravished by the revelation of his glory? I call you to make those commitments now for the sake of your own soul and for the glory of God, where that stuff is really good to do, to take the time. And it's hard because it's not really a productivity thing. And I feel like a lot of us, I'm like, man, give me a list, let me get after it. And it's hard to do that. And it's so good for you and necessary and needed, because if you don't look at creation and see his glory, or, look for Jesus in the Gospels and all these things, man, you're really, really missing out.
Yep. All right. 14, the second half of that verse says, and make no provision for the flesh in regard to its lust. I remember when I was probably 10th, 11th grade, there was this guy who was from Russia who went to, I think, Dallas Seminary, some seminary, and came and preached a series of passages. And he was talking about how we get saved, and like we have this garden, and it's immediately kind of turned, it's got new life in it that it could never had on it before, but the garden still has stones in it. That you got to get those stones out for it to be a healthy garden. He's like, some of the stones are easy to get out. You just pick them up, throw them. Some are big, and they take a lot of work to get out. And he was kind of using that as comparison for some of these things. And he said, but the sad thing is, sometimes in the middle of the night, we go out and we get those stones, we put them back in the garden.
And go back to that.
Yeah, and so, wherever, where you struggle, we all have, I think, different struggle areas. Confession time. I was on the phone today.
Let's confess our deepest, darkest sins. You first.
I was on the phone today, and you've been on the phone with someone, and like basically their job is to tell you no.
Oh yeah.
And my job at that point in time is like, no's not going to be an acceptable answer here, and here's why. And we were driving back from Anderson, and Jill's like, "You were being very rude with that woman." I'm like, "Was I really though?" Like, and I think look back and like, okay, probably I was being rude. And it's hard too when you're over the phone.
Yeah,
and someone's
and you
being
were telling
unreasonable.
me it was like a woman, so like she should have submitted to you. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. Just kidding.
Yeah, but so like I'm thinking, how do I still, because as a consumer, I still need to be able to get across, no's not an acceptable answer in this case, and here's why it's not an acceptable answer. How do I do that in a way that's not committing strife, that's not being rude, tough. That's a good witness, So. Like I was thinking back, would I want a recording of that conversation to play? Probably not.
Yeah.
I didn't cuss her out or anything. I was just like, no, let me explain it to you again.
Yeah. I can relate for sure. Pastor goes to the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:27 through 30, where he says, "You've heard that it was said, don't commit adultery. But I say to you, that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And then talks in this hyperbole, if your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. And maybe it's not literal, but it's not unimportant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if you find that there are certain triggers to your sin areas, and Jill mentioned, especially when he was younger, I don't know now if it's different or if they find a different spot at the beach, but just didn't go to the beach because, there's people who are not necessarily dressed appropriately. We've even tried to have baptisms out at the beach because we tried to do it public, but that's can be difficult sometimes. Social media platforms could be, a trigger. Just your different friend groups.
Yeah, we're talking about confession time. Michael, I know you're my friend, but I've got to cut you out of my life. No, yeah, that's good. Pastor made the good point. That really shapes your life. Who do you spend time with? So really, really good sermon. We get into the conclusion, and Pastor makes this quote, a couple of quotes by Jonathan Edwards.
I think it's just one long quote, okay. 2 different paragraphs.
Well, take it away, Mr. Audiobook.
All right, there we go. Holiness is a most beautiful and lovely thing. We drink in strange notions of holiness from our childhood, as if it were a melancholy, morose, sour, and unpleasant thing. But there is nothing in it but what is sweet and ravishingly lovely. 'Tis the highest beauty and amiableness, vastly above all other beauties. 'Tis the divine beauty makes the soul heavenly and far purer than anything here on earth. This world is like mire and filth and defilement to that soul which is sanctified. 'Tis of a sweet, pleasant, charming, lovely, amiable, delightful, serene, calm, and still nature. 'Tis almost too high a beauty for any creatures to be adorned with. It makes the soul a little sweet and delightful image of the blessed Jehovah. That's holiness.
Jonathan Edwards. I'll tell you what, we should bring Tis back.
Tis
had its day, and I feel like it's, I don't know when it went out of style, but maybe we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
Tis the day.
Yeah. There was some song or something that came on. This reminded me of it, and it had a slant rhyme in it.
Oh.
And Chloe's like, don't let Zach hear it because he does not like slant rhymes.
I'm just like, what's the point? Yeah, I'm getting fired up already. But we'll talk about what holiness is really like. This quote by John Bloom, it's really good. He says, if we want to know the essence of the health of holiness, we need to look elsewhere. Like Psalm 16:11, in your holy presence there's fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. That is what holiness is really like. As much joy and pleasure that we can contain for as long as is possible, which because God grants it is forever. Do you see it? Holiness is not a state of denial characterized by abstaining from defiling thoughts, motivations, behaviors. True holiness is a state of delight. And the more true holiness we experience, the fuller our joy and greater our pleasure. Sounds a lot like John Piper's book, Desiring God. And it's a whole just mind shift where Christian life's complicated. There are things, you take up your cross, you die, you deny yourself. But it's not like it's the worst thing in the world. Right. And actually, there's great joy in that sort of thing. We can delight. It's a really good thing.
All right, and unless you remember this Augustine story.
I do remember, yes, Hartnett, how to pronounce the name. I remember that.
He said either way, right?
I know,
right.
Man.
I was going to skip over because I don't remember the details on this one.
Let's skip over it. I think the takeaway was he was living a very sinful life, like promiscuous guy, and then he turned and changed and said, hey, it's great. Yeah,
I thought he was going to tell this story, so we'll tell this story instead.
Oh, there we go.
That there was some lady that he had been promiscuous with in his former life, and then he was saved, and she saw him later and was like, it's me, and he was like, but it's not me anymore. I'm not the same guy anymore.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's good.
It's me, but it's not me. Yeah. We're at the point of application. Application number 1. Pray for God to stir your heart, to motivate you because of his mercy shown in Christ and because of the hope of Christ's return. Paul talks about this a lot. There's a reason. Most of the time it's for motivation.
Number 2, are there provisions for the flesh in regard to its lust that you need to be removed? Are you willing to deal with it? Do you need help? If you need accountability, that's something that you call out someone that's trusted to help you remove those provisions of the flesh.
Then think about that quote by Jonathan Edwards Michael read earlier. How do you view holiness? What comes to your mind when you think of holiness? Is it, a beautiful thing like it really is?
And then number 4, how do you respond to those who spread strife among brothers? I normally just hit them, slap them, you know what I'm saying?
a little right hook does the trick.
Yeah. I think his point was, if someone's gossiping to you, you need to be like, hey, have you talked to that other person? You need to let's follow the proper procedures.
What if it's gossiping in the form of prayer requests? hey.
Please pray for Margaret. She stole my recipe and has been making it and telling everybody it's hers.
Oh, gotta love it. Man, 13 chapters in the books.
That's right. I think next one we're on to chapter 14, right?
Yeah, and we're covering a good chunk of it, so we're moving right along. That's our take.
Thanks for listening to Take 2. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.